All right, my friends, so I had a guy on my YouTube channel take umbrage with me when I said Jane Fonda sitting on the tank of a Northern Vietnamese army, a tank that was pointed at American service personnel in Vietnam, was not a peace initiative. And for the life of me, the idea that Jane Fonda and her support of communism is somehow peaceful, it infuriates me. There's no other way around that. And so I'm going to take a moment here to tell you a little bit of my story, to share with you a book that literally changed my life for sure. And I just, the idiocy, there's no other way around that, of equating communist freedom fighters with peaceful initiatives infuriates me. I just sit there, I literally don't know if it's evil or ignorance or a combination therein. You can't have communism and peaceful initiatives. They don't work hand in hand. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my background. Let's put it this way. If you are on the left, all right, I can out-left you. That's all there is to it. If you had Gus Hall and Angela Davis bumper stickers in your home in 1976, you are as left as what I was raised with. If you don't know who Gus Hall or Angela Davis is, don't take your leftist to me. I don't want to hear it. I just don't. Angela Hall and Gus Davis ran for the president of the American Communist Party. Did you have bumper stickers with Angela Hall and Gus Davis? Huh? Did you have an American flag hanging upside down in your room when you were growing up? No. Did you go to peace rallies to protest against nuclear power? Did you go to far left Democratic caucuses, because in Maine they don't have a primary, they have a caucus to vote for various far left wing candidates? Did you have a printing press down in your basement that your dad was using to advance the far left wing cause? Did you have all that stuff? No, you didn't. Did you have, the list will go on and on. So if you don't know who Gus Hall is, and you don't know who Angela Davis is, and by the way, if you think Angela Davis was a freedom fighter, you're insane. There's no other way around that. Why then, when the Polish were rebelling against the ironclad tanks against the Soviet Union, did Angela Davis, when she said, "Look, would you help us? We're fighting these people, and you are there. You're apparently for you're anti-political prisoners. Help us." And she goes, "No, you guys deserve your fate. These are just people exercising their right to join a labor union." And Angela Davis said, no, they deserve to be in jail. Why? Because they're protesting against a communist. Paul Robeson, George Bernard Shaw, never mind Walter Durante, so many legions of communist sympathizers who knew what was happening, and they did nothing except to allow the mindless butchering of millions and millions of people. Jane Fonda sitting on an NVA tank that's pointing at American servicemen who were drafted, by the way. Many of these people were drafted against their own accord to go fight. 58,000 died, men, 7 women died in Vietnam. Most of them, many of them, I don't know about most, were drafted against their will. My dad was not drafted. Why? Because my mom was pregnant with me, and he got an exemption because I don't know what the exemption was back then. I guess if you had a pregnant wife at home, you didn't get drafted or something like that. I don't know. It infuriates. So anyway, I'm sitting in Honduras when this is in 1990, and we're sitting in this little library, getting ready to take off to go to we go to these little outposts, one on Tyre Island, one in some mountain area, and I forgot the third one. And what would happen is you'd sit on these little outposts for, I guess, 3 weeks at a time or something like that. And you just pull, frankly, I don't even know what's going on there. I just know you pull security. I guess the Air Force, the Air Force had these little listening posts that were quite fancy, actually, that we'd pull security for. I still don't really know exactly what we're doing there. I mean, I was just, E3, private first class. I had no clue. But anyway, and so we'd go to these little outposts, for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And so when you're in the main base in Sotocano Air Force Base in Honduras, they have a library, they have a gym, the chow hall and all that. It's a small town. I'll never forget. So I'm sitting there at the library. I think we had like 15 minutes before formation, before we're getting ready to take off to go to one of the outposts, and where you're just eating, basically eating crap and MREs. I don't think we had TV or nothing like that. You're just literally remote outpost in Honduras with nothing to do. You hope your batteries don't run dead and things like that for your Walkman. That was back in the days of Walkman. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, man, I got 5 minutes before I got to get a formation. I'm looking at the library, and I just, for some reason, this book right here, Allan Drury's Come Nineveh, Come Tyre, I just grabbed it. I mean, literally, I guess I like the cover. You know, I mean, it's got fire in cities, and I said, okay, I like the cover. And this is 1990. Listen, I voted for Mike Dukakis. I voted for Barbara Mikulski in 1988. Like I said, I'm very well attuned to the words and the languaging of the left, having been raised on the left, and not just the left like the Edward Kennedy left of the Democratic Party. We're talking the radical far left. Let's just put it that way. And so when I picked this book up, I had no clue who Allan Drury was. I just, Frank, I just liked the cover. And it just literally, this book is the book that changed my life for everything. And that's why they say books don't change your life. Well, you just look at the Bible. The Bible changes lives all the time. So didn't Marxist, Communist Manifesto. So didn't Wealth of Nations by, I forgot the whole title, from Adam Smith. Books change lives, absolutely. And this one was what changed my life. Atlas Shrugged changed many people's lives. Atlas Shrugged was a little bit too, for me, it was a tough read. It was a good book, but it's tough. That didn't do a whole lot for me. But Come Nineveh, Come Tyre did, and by Allan Drury. In his most terrifying political novel ever, Allan Drury sketches a future for America that is both frighteningly cataclysmic and disturbingly logical. With the same political acumen and dazzling literary skill that won him the Pulitzer Prize for Advice and Consent, Drury has created a primer of the politically possible, a novel that's bold, powerful, and profoundly disquieting. What ultimately happens, well, I probably shouldn't tell you, but basically this is America capitulating to the communists. And the funny thing about this is Drury actually has specific quotes of the communists, what they were hoping to accomplish. And so we sat there all day long and said, no, they're just joking. They're not, and they're sitting there saying, we are publishing this for all to see. This isn't Manchurian Candidate stuff. It turned out to be a Manchurian Candidate. And I never read that book or watched that movie. I just think that's like whatever that is a plant from a power that wants to take over internally. Actually, it's kind of funny because at the end they got their liberal news media, and even back here, Drew was talking about the liberal news media, and even back then the liberal opinion writers said, "I should have known." If you follow South Park, we should have listened. We should have listened. That's what they said about global warming. We should have listened. In this case, we have one of the political left-wing commentators who can't stand their version of not even Ronald Reagan, probably George H.W. Bush. I mean, in this case, the Democrats are far left. There's some moderate Democrats, like the old school Democrats of what I grew up in. You had Kennedy was left. We had far left, and then you had more moderate of Jimmy Carter types. Don't forget JFK was a tax cutter, by the way, and an staunch anti-commie. But anyway, in this case, we got far left Democrats. You got the middle of the road Democrats, and then you have the Republicans are all just kind of like George H.W. Bush. There's not a Reagan among them, that's for sure. Very Bob Michael, a wonderful guy from Illinois who ran the Republican minority for years and if not decades. Nice, they went along, to get along, and they did essentially what the Democrats want them to do. That's what you have in this book with the Republican Party. And what happens is, let's just put it this way, one of the Democrats becomes president, and in a lot of capitulation, which you can see what's happening with the communists in the Soviet Union and what they're trying to do. You can see it in your very eyes, and by the time people wake up, it's just too late. It's actually quite frightening. And the thing that really turned me is the quotes directly from the communists themselves of what they were trying to do. In fact, you can go chapter over chapter. Let's see if I can't find one. Such a good book. Let's see here if I can't find one here, because it's let's see. Hold on just a second here, my friends. I don't know if I'll be able to find one when I got this, but some of the quotes on here are legendary, directly from the communists and what they said our intentions were. It's nuts, and you're sitting there thinking, man, how could we have been so ignorant? And yeah, I'm not going to find any quotes. That's too bad. I didn't like Advice and Consent by Drury. Actually, that didn't do much for me. I didn't like that much at all. But anyway, it's a great political read. It's actually quite frightening. If I would have read this back earlier in my days of not knowing what I knew when I was in 1990 in the Army, I don't think I would have got as much out of it as I did. It just I literally think God does weird things. So let's put it that way. There's no they had all these books, stacks of books, just sitting in some crappy old library. You can take them home. You can do whatever you want. There's no Dewey Decimal System. Just all these books that are sitting there. And for some reason, this found its way to me. It's amazing, and that started me my anti-communist crusade. Because I can't stand communism. Communism has killed so many people. It's horrible. Never mind the Khmer Rouge. I mean, that's just one example. Never mind the North Vietnamese and the boat people and whatnot. I mean, it's horrible. Never mind China and Tiananmen Square with look, I don't pronounce things well. With that guy standing there. I mean, obviously he didn't get run over, but how many massacres happened? Never mind the Shining Path in Peru. Just the communists have taken look what Daniel Ortega is doing right now in Nicaragua. I mean, this is just bad human beings. Look what the Red Army, Fascist Army was doing, and it was France or Germany or something like that in the 70s. I mean, these people don't go away. They need to be defeated, and they need to be defeated by saying how evil that ideology is. And what happens is when you have a faith in a supernatural being, whatever your supernatural being is, be it Allah, be it, I don't know what, I guess God of Abraham for Jews, I don't know what, the Indians, not Native Americans, or American Indians, but the Indians, I don't know, Christian, I don't know what that is, Christian or something like that. But whatever, if you don't have a faith in a supernatural being that's outside of our world here today, you're going to find your political will serve that purpose. And when politics are your God, you can make excuses for excesses that are hurting people. And I can't take that. Jane Fonda sitting on the tank of Northern Vietnamese, knowing full well what these people were doing, and then full well what they were going to do. I sit there and I say, look, I don't want America engaged in wars. I mean, I think we've learned from George W. Bush that we can't win the world's wars. We can't. But at the same time, to actually root for the enemy on people who are drafted against no accord of their own to go serve a war that look, I mean, it was honorable to fight and beat the communists. Absolutely. I got nothing but respect for every single person who fought in Vietnam. Every single person. Nothing but respect for every single person who was in the military, even if they didn't go to combat. I got nothing but respect for all those people. But to sit there and just say it's okay for this person to root for the away team while innocent Americans are, I find it just disgusting. I can't find anything. I find that absolutely disgusting. Probably more disgusting Alger Hiss. All these people say Alger Hiss was, he was framed. No, he wasn't. Alger Hiss was an absolute communist. We know that for a fact. And if you read Witness by Whittaker Chambers, I mean, that people say, oh, Whittaker Chambers. No. We know for a fact when they open up the Soviet Union, the think tank stuff, all the documents that they had, we know Alger Hiss was a communist relaying information back to the communists in the Soviet Union. We know Ted Kennedy actually tried to dock with Andropov to basically work around Reagan, and the media didn't care about that. It's weird. We know these things to be true. We see them in the literature of when the Soviet Union crashed, and then Russia under Yeltsin opened it up for the world to see. We know these things to be true, and we know the evil that communism was doing. We know what happened in Siberia. We know what happened in the labor camps and the gulags. We know these things, and they happened while Americans were allowing it, and we're saying it's okay. Now, I don't think we should have gone to war. No, not at all. I mean, that's not our fight. But to turn around at the same point and say we want Angela Davis and Gus Hall while these things were going on, and we knew full well about it, I sit there and I say that's nuts. How could you say you're for freedom? I just don't get it. I find it evil. No other way around that. And anyway, so this would be a good book. Still, I mean, obviously it's well before the internet, so I think it's written during the 70s, 60s actually, 70s. A lot of stuff. If you ever read Bonfire of the Vanities, by the way, by Thomas Wolfe, rest his soul. Very just, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot. It's a fictional, narrative fiction, right? But there's so much stuff in that book that is true even today that just the same thing with here. You read this book, you'll be able to identify like Frank Church of Idaho. Now, in this guy, they don't have Frank Church, but they got another guy, I think, from Idaho, a big lib. If you remember Frank Church, the Church Commission and whatnot, and that's some of the stuff that led up to 9/11. Just not, anyway, at the end, you'll be able to identify some of the similar kind of people that Drury's talking about here in pre-political internet days, but also today too. I mean, my goodness, you'll say, oh man, that's just like Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island or whatever, or that's just like Bob Michael, like I said, of Illinois. You'll see a lot of similarities because the names change, but the structures don't. Communism got a commie. That's all there is to it. Capitalists, by and large, they sit there and they're very defensive, like, oh yeah, we feel guilty for who we are in America, which they would not, but this is how it works. And when you read the book, you'll start seeing, well, Cuba, look at Cuba. Look at Castro. You got Jay-Z and Beyonce down there. This is great. It's like stepping back time. Hey, it's great for you. It's not great for the Cubans. My goodness. The ignorance. There's a guy named Paul Hollander who writes Political Pilgrims. I actually got a signed copy of his book. He writes it. Rebecca West, another person who writes about these wealthy liberals in the United States, and then of course Thomas Wolfe writes not the bonfires of the vanities about the Leonard Bernstein, the composer in New York, and bringing Castro, and just so much of these books out there. Horowitz had written a Radical Son, about his coming up. I'm a communist. It's lots of literature on that, and just how not just hypocritical, but I frankly find it evil. I really do. And if that offends you, I'm sorry. I call it like I see it, and that is one thing that needs to be fought every single step of the way. The communist, the tyranny of the left, and what it's trying to do via those, like just sitting on a tank of an NBA tank, pointing at innocent Americans who really didn't choose to be there. On top of what else is going on. I mean, you got to fight that stuff, and you got to fight it, and you got to say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. There's no justification for supporting tyrannical regimes like Angela Davis did. Not whatsoever, especially when you're calling yourself a freedom fighter. Can't do that, and people who do that should be called out for it. And so if you think it's peaceful to support these kind of regimes and things, I highly ask you to think again. All right, that's all I got to say about that. You can get the book. I'll put books in the show notes, the various books I like on this, because I think it's a lot of wonderful reading, and I think you get a lot out of it. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks now.